A whisper moved through the arena before any sound of hooves did. People nudged each other, smirking, phones up, ready to record a failure. In the center stood a pale horse with cloudy eyes, thin as if winter had lived inside him. A woman stepped in from the side gate and the laughter faded like dust. She did not wave. She did not bow. She only breathed his name once, so soft I almost missed it, and the horse leaned toward the sound like the word itself had weight. They had called the morning a tryout. It felt like a trial. Kids ate popcorn. Old men crossed their arms. A handler tugged the lead rope and the horse stumbled, nearly fell. Someone whispered, "He can't even see." Another said, "Cruel to bring that one." The woman kept walking, slow, careful, not playing to the crowd, not even meeting the handler's eyes. "Easy boy," she said. Her voice was low, steady, like a path through fog. The horse turned his head toward her and went still. No one clapped. No one dared. I stood near the rail and saw her hand stop in the air a few inches from his cheek. She did not touch him yet. She only let him smell the space between skin and skin. "Do you remember," she asked, "when rain sounded like coins on the tin roof?" The handler frowned. "Lady, he doesn't remember anything." She did not answer him. She whispered again, a name not the one the announcer had on the card. It slid out of her like a secret she had kept under her tongue for years. The horse's ears flicked forward, sharp, certain, and the arena changed shape in that second. "Step back," she told the handler. He scoffed, but he stepped. You could hear the leather creak. You could hear a girl gasp. The horse took a breath so deep it lifted his ribs like a tide. The woman lowered herself to one knee. Dust rose around her and caught the light. "I came back," she said. "I was late, but I came back." The horse bent, stiff at first, searching the ground with knees that did not trust the earth. Someone laughed to cover fear. Then the front legs folded cleanly, and the pale head bowed until his muzzle hovered over her hand. No one spoke. Even the loud ones shut their mouths. The woman pressed her forehead to his, and I heard him sigh into her palm, a sound like relief finding a home. The handler whispered, "How did you do that?" She did not look up. "I did not," she said. "He did." And for a heartbeat that felt like a whole year, the arena held its breath with them, as if it knew we were watching a promise come true. The crowd began to breathe again, but it was a careful, uneasy sound, as if everyone had seen something they weren't supposed to. The horse stayed low, the woman still kneeling, their silence louder than applause. A man near the gate muttered, "It's a trick, all of it." Another replied, "No one trains that kind of thing." But Sarah, yes, someone whispered her name now, didn't hear them. Her eyes stayed on the horse, tears tracing lines through the dust on her face. When she finally stood, her knees trembled. The horse followed her movement with his head, blind but certain. "It's him," she whispered to herself. The handler looked confused. "Who?" "Skyler," she said. The name carried the weight of years and the man froze. "That's not what he's called here." She gave a soft, broken smile. "It's what I called him before they sold him." Someone in the crowd asked, "Sold? You mean this horse was yours?" The question floated, and all the whispering turned into one thick silence again. Sarah brushed the horse's mane gently. "They said he was gone. They lied." The announcer stepped forward, trying to sound professional. "Ma'am, if there's been a misunderstanding, you can take this up with management." "Misunderstanding?" she cut in. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "They took him while I was in the hospital. I looked for him for years." The handler shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward the stables. "That's above my pay grade," he muttered. Behind him, an older man appeared, jeans, flannel shirt, a face carved by sun and regret. "Sarah," he said, voice low. She froze. "Dean." The crowd murmured. Everyone in town knew Dean Butterscotch, horse trader, the man who bought and sold other people's dreams. "You knew," she said quietly. "You knew it was him." Dean swallowed hard. "I didn't know he was yours. I swear." Her eyes narrowed. "You knew he wasn't just anyone's." He looked down, jaw tight. "He was broken when I got him. Wouldn't let anyone near his face." "He remembered," she said softly. "He always did." And then she looked beyond Dean, past the crowd, toward the far corner of the stands. A man stood there, not clapping, not moving, just watching her. Tall, coat too formal for the weather, hands in his pockets. When their eyes met, he nodded once, slow, deliberate, and turned to leave. Sarah's breath caught. She whispered, "Who was that?" Dean looked up, frowning. "Who?" "The man in the coat," she said, but when she turned back, the space was empty. Sarah didn't stay for the applause that never came. She slipped out through the back gate, boots crunching over gravel, the wind catching her hair. Behind her, people whispered questions she didn't care to answer. The pale horse, her Skyler, had changed everything in a few quiet minutes, but something in her heart said this wasn't an accident. The stranger's stillness, his small nod, it wasn't random. At her truck, she sat for a long moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. The arena lights flickered in the rearview mirror like ghosts of a past she thought she'd buried. Then she reached for the glove box and pulled out a worn notebook filled with addresses and half-crossed-out names. Years ago, she had searched every corner of the state for Skyler. Each name in that book had led nowhere, but now one stood out like a scar. Reggie Muffin. Reggie was a trader, the kind who bought horses for pennies and sold them under new names. The thought made her stomach tighten. She started the engine and drove. The road stretched out in front of her like a memory refusing to fade. Trees leaned close as if listening, and each mile pressed heavier against her chest. When she reached Reggie's old property, the sun had already dropped behind the hills. The barn looked smaller now, the paint peeling, the gate hanging crooked. She knocked on the door once, twice. Nothing. But as she turned to leave, a rough voice rasped, "I knew you'd come." He stood in the doorway, older, thinner, a shadow of the man she remembered. "You're here about the horse," he said. She nodded. "Skyler. Tell me who sent him back to me." Reggie hesitated, eyes flicking toward the dim barn behind him. "You won't like the answer." "I've already lived without it," she said. "That was worse." He sighed, stepped aside. Inside, the house smelled of dust and burnt coffee. On the table lay a folder, edges curled and stained. He pushed it toward her. Someone wanted him gone. Not just sold, gone. He wasn't listed under your name anymore. Papers were changed. Sarah opened the folder with shaking hands. Her name had been crossed out in thick black ink, replaced with another, Harold Custard. She looked up sharply. "The judge?" Reggie nodded slowly. "The same. And he's the reason you lost him." For a moment she couldn't breathe. The man who once helped her fund the rescue shelter, who gave speeches about honesty and community, had taken her horse. "Why?" she whispered. Reggie met her eyes, voice low. "Because Skyler was proof of something he didn't want anyone to find." Sarah's fingers trembled as she turned each page, her eyes tracing the blacked-out lines and half-torn records. Every document led back to one man. The judge who once smiled from behind church fundraisers, who had written her recommendation when she started the rescue program. Harold Custard, the man who'd signed the papers that erased her from her own horse's life. "Proof of what?" she asked quietly. Reggie leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking under his weight. "Land," he said. "And money. You remember that property near the old river line?" Sarah nodded. "My father leased it to the county before he died." Reggie tapped the folder. "That's where it started. Custard used horses as part of fake loan collateral. Skyler wasn't just a pet, Sarah. He was listed as an asset in that deal. When you got sick, they changed the name on the papers and buried it under new ownership. If anyone ever found the original documents, that loan would be exposed as fraud." The words sank deep. "He used him to cover a crime," she whispered. Reggie's eyes softened, but his voice stayed rough. "And when the auditors started sniffing around, he wanted the horse gone. Safer that way." She closed the folder, breathing through her nose to keep from shaking. "Someone wanted me there today," she said. "Someone wanted me to see him again." Reggie nodded slowly. "That man in the coat. He's not new. He used to handle paperwork for the judge. A fixer type. Probably wanted to scare the old man, or maybe warn you." Sarah's stomach tightened. "Warn me of what?" Reggie looked at her for a long second, then whispered, "Of what happens when you dig up things that powerful people buried." She stood, sliding the folder into her bag. "I'm not afraid of him," she said, but her voice betrayed a tremor. At the door, Reggie called out, "You should be." Sarah drove away with the headlights cutting through the fog, the papers beside her humming like a heartbeat. The truth had found her again, but she wasn't sure yet if it had come as a gift or a punishment. Somewhere in the dark, the judge who stole her horse still believed the past was buried. She knew better now. The ground only held secrets for so long. Sarah parked her truck a few streets away from the courthouse, hands clenched around the steering wheel. The folder Reggie had given her sat on the seat beside her, thick with papers that hummed with truth and danger. She stared at the brick building ahead, tall, proud, and too clean for the rot it hid inside. Judge Harold Custard was still in office, still smiling for photographs in the local paper, still pretending to be the kind of man who built communities instead of stealing them. When she stepped inside, the clerk at the front desk looked up with polite recognition. "Miss Holt, it's been a long time," she said. Judge Custard is in his office if you'd like to speak to him. Sarah managed a small nod, though her throat was dry. Each step down that polished hallway echoed louder than the last. When she reached the door marked Judge Harold Custard, she didn't knock softly. She pushed it open. The man behind the desk looked up, startled for a moment, then smiled, the kind of smile that never touched the eyes. "Sarah Holt," he said. "I didn't expect to see you again." "You forged my name off the papers," she said quietly. His smile faltered. "I don't know what you're talking about." She placed the folder on his desk, pages spilling slightly. "Skyler's ownership. My father's property. The loan papers with your signature." Harold leaned back, studying her like a chess piece he thought he'd already removed from the board. "I did what I had to do," he said finally. "You were in the hospital, unreachable. The horse was collateral tied to disputed land. I saved him from being destroyed." "You erased me," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "You didn't save him. You hid him." He stood, straightening his tie. "Careful, Sarah. You don't know who you're accusing." "I know exactly who," she said. "And I have proof." For the first time his calm cracked. "You have no idea what you've stepped into," he said. "I do," she replied. "And I'm not stepping out." As she turned to leave, his voice followed her. "Be careful what you wake up. Some things were buried for a reason." Outside she gripped the folder tighter. The wind felt colder now. The truth was out there, just beneath the surface, and she had just torn the first shovelful of dirt away. Sarah didn't go home that night. She drove until the gas light came on, then stopped at a quiet diner off the highway. The rain outside hit the windows in slow, heavy drops, like the sky was tired of holding back. She took the folder from the seat and spread the pages across the booth. Judge Harold's name appeared again and again, stamped, signed, or scribbled in margins, always beside someone else's loss. A waitress poured her coffee and asked, "You all right, honey?" Sarah managed a thin smile. "I will be." She didn't notice the man in the corner booth until he stood up. The same coat. The same stillness from the arena. He approached slowly, his footsteps soft but deliberate. "You shouldn't be alone tonight," he said. Sarah's pulse jumped. "Who are you?" "I'm someone who used to work for him," the man said, sitting opposite her. His eyes were calm, unreadable. "I saw what they did to you and to others. You weren't supposed to find out." "Then why did you bring him back?" she asked, her voice low. He looked down at the table. "Because he's the only thing that can't lie. People forget, documents burn, but a living witness." He stopped himself, exhaling. "The judge thought Skyler was destroyed years ago. I sent that invitation to make sure you'd come." Sarah leaned forward. "Why now?" "Because the case he buried is being reopened. There's a woman, a journalist, digging into land fraud around the county lines. If she finds out about Skyler, it ties him to the forged deeds." "What's her name?" "Lorna Claire," he said. "She's printing her story in a week. But if she goes to press without you, it'll sound like rumor. You're the only one who can prove what happened." Sarah's heart pounded. "Then I need to find her." He nodded. "She'll find you first." He stood up to leave but paused. "You've got courage, Sarah. Just don't mistake it for safety." When he walked out into the rain, she realized something strange. He'd never told her his name. And when she turned to look out the window, his car was already gone, swallowed by the mist like he'd never been there at all. The next morning, Sarah's phone buzzed before sunrise. A known number. She hesitated, then answered. "Miss Holt?" a woman's voice asked. "This is Lorna Claire. We need to talk." Sarah's breath caught. "You found me." "Your story found me first," Lorna said. "Meet me at the old diner off Route 5. Bring the folder." By the time Sarah arrived, the same waitress from the night before was wiping the counter. Lorna sat near the back, younger than Sarah expected, sharp-eyed, a recorder already on the table. She slid a small envelope forward. "Before we talk, look at this." Inside was a photograph. Skyler stood younger, healthier, beside Judge Harold Custard in front of a barn. The logo painted on the wall made Sarah's stomach twist, her father's ranch emblem. "He was yours long before you adopted him," Lorna said softly. "Your father registered him under a different name, Windsor's Ghost. Custard changed the records after your accident. He used your family's property and the horse as leverage in an illegal land deal. When the investigation started, he buried everything, including you." Sarah stared at the photo, feeling like her past had just folded into the present. "My father never told me." "Maybe he didn't know the full story," Lorna said. "But you do now. And I can't publish without you." If you come forward, we can expose him together. Sarah's hands shook. He warned me not to dig. Said I'd wake something buried. Lorna gave a sad smile. Truth doesn't stay buried, Sarah. It waits. Just then the bell above the diner door rang. Dean Butterscotch stepped in, hat in hand. His eyes found Sarah and his face paled. You shouldn't be here, he said. What do you mean? Sarah asked. He glanced toward the window. They know you've been asking questions. The judge's people. You've got to be careful. Lorna leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Dean, did you help them hide the papers? He froze, jaw tight. I didn't know what it was about, he said. They said it was just business. Business? Sarah whispered. They stole my father's land. Dean looked at her with guilt carved deep in his face. And now they're scared you'll take it back. Sarah folded the photo, slipping it into her pocket. I'm not scared, she said. Not anymore. Lorna met her eyes. Then let's show them what truth looks like in daylight. The courthouse lawn was filled with laughter that afternoon. Children chasing balloons, the town's brass band rehearsing for the fall festival. On the surface, everything looked harmless. But Sarah felt the weight of something much bigger in the air, something that made her heart pound like a second pulse. She and Lorna stood near the edge of the crowd, the folder tucked safely in Sarah's satchel. Judge Harold Custard was scheduled to speak at noon. It was tradition, his yearly address about community progress and integrity. The irony made Sarah's stomach twist. Lorna checked her watch. If you want to do this, you have 5 minutes before he starts. Sarah's palms were damp, her throat dry. You really think people will believe me? They'll believe the papers, Lorna said. And they'll believe what they saw at that arena. Everyone did. The crowd began to quiet as the judge walked up the wooden stage steps. His silver hair gleamed under the sun. Good afternoon, friends, he began, voice smooth and familiar. It's always a joy to celebrate another year of trust. Trust. Sarah's voice cut through like a bell. Heads turned. The microphone squealed as she stepped forward. You mean the kind you buy and sell? A murmur rippled through the crowd. Harold's hand gripped the podium. Miss Holt, this isn't the time. It's the perfect time, she said. She held up the old photograph of him standing beside her horse, the barn logo clear as day. This is the man who took my father's land, my horse, and nearly my life. He forged ownership records while I was in the hospital. He buried my name, my family, and called it legal. People gasped. Someone shouted, Is it true? Harold's voice cracked for the first time. You can't prove any of that. Lorna stepped forward, recorder in hand. We have the files, the signatures, the missing deeds, and your accomplice's statements. It's over, Judge. The band had stopped playing. The children had stopped running. The air hung heavy with truth. Harold stepped down slowly, his face pale, the applause that usually followed him replaced by a silence sharp enough to cut. Sarah turned toward the crowd. You can't undo what was taken, she said, her voice trembling but clear. But you can stop pretending it was right. Lorna placed a hand on her shoulder. It's done, she whispered. But Sarah knew it wasn't. Justice was never a single moment, it was the weight you learned to live with afterward. A week later, the town didn't sound the same anymore. The gossip that once circled Sarah like smoke had turned into quiet respect. Judge Harold Custard had resigned pending investigation, though everyone knew what that meant. Lorna's story was on the front page of every local paper, her name bold but Sarah's story brighter. At the ranch, autumn light fell softly across the paddock. Skyler stood near the fence, his pale coat catching the sun, his ears flicking toward every familiar sound. He couldn't see her, but he always knew when she was near. Sarah walked toward him slowly, the way she always had, hand brushing the tall grass as she passed. We did it, boy, she whispered. They know the truth now. He turned his head, muzzle reaching for her palm, breath warm against her skin. For a long time, she just stood there, feeling the heartbeat under her fingertips. It was stronger now, steady, like the ground had finally stopped shifting beneath them both. Dean Butterscotch came by that afternoon, hat in hand, eyes full of quiet apology. I'm sorry, he said. For all of it. Sarah gave a small nod. You helped fix what you broke. That's more than most ever do. He nodded back, a little relief showing in the lines of his face. Town's putting together a fund to rebuild your barn roof, he said. Guess folks figured it's time to help the woman who never gave up. Lorna arrived later with a new notebook in her hand. They're reopening the old property line, she told her. You'll get your land back. Sarah smiled faintly. I already did, she said, looking at Skyler. When evening came, the townsfolk gathered at her ranch for a small event. No cameras this time, no speeches, just neighbors and the smell of hay and cider. Sarah led Skyler into the paddock. He walked steady beside her, blind but brave, his steps sure. When she stopped, he turned his head toward her, as if asking a question only she could hear. Then, slowly he lowered himself to one knee. No one laughed. No one whispered. They only watched as Sarah knelt too, hand resting on his mane, her eyes shining through the quiet. "You came back to me in the dark," she whispered, "and you brought light." And that was the lesson everyone carried home that night. That faith remembers what the world forgets, that love outlives loss, and that truth, no matter how long it's buried, always finds its way back to the light.